Hi there, and welcome back to the FFS podcast. This is the It's Classified series, and this is episode number 3. We've done 2 episodes on this series, and in the first episode, we looked at the top 20 transfers of this summer window. And in episode 2, we looked at the transfer window as a whole for the WSL. So we looked at clubs, how well clubs did. For episode number 3, we are looking at the top 10 richest club owners currently. So this is just before Newcastle's takeover. Actually, it's happened already for us, but the top 10 before they were taken over by the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Authority, or whoever they want to claim that is taken over them. But it's so you can see the list here. We've got 11 people here. This is basically based off a list that was compiled by the Independent, and obviously there have been a lot of shifts in who comprises of this top 10. If you go by, I know the Daily Mail had another American owner in here. They had Dietmar Hopp higher up the order, stuff like that. But we're just going to go on this because these are kind of the top 10 that's predominantly common amongst all articles. So, so joining me on this podcast, we've got 3 guests who are fans of various clubs across different leagues. So they give us a different perspective of how they perceive those owners to have been. Now, there are certain rules. So when we're talking about the owners, we're talking about how well they have invested in the club and how well they've been involved in the club. We're not looking at obviously that does result in how well the team performs as well. But, if it's been terrible, but the owner has invested good and has been good, but they have had other issues, we can still put them higher up. So it's basically looking at just how they have been involved and not looking at other factors like, maybe that could have been down to the coach or something like that. But again, if the coach that they've hired is wrong, it's all up to them, higher ups and all of that. So let's go start with introductions, and let's start with Parmeshwar. Parmeshwar, you haven't been on the podcast before. But we had this like small talk before when we were supposed to record this. But anyway, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
So first of all, thanks for having me. It's my first time here, and of course, I'm looking forward to this. So I'll just keep it as a brief intro. I've been an Inter fan since like mid 2003s, the year where ironically Juventus and AC Milan were in the Champions League final. It's been what now 18 years, and not really been supporting them per se, only for trophies, because Inter doesn't really win a lot of trophies in general. Only we won like the Scudetto after like 11 years. But my main reason was players like Recoba, Zanetti, and the fact that in Italy, Inter was like the first club to start accepting global players, something that I could resonate with. So that was me pretty much supporting Inter. That has been my journey, and of course, as you are a Liverpool fan, you must know what high ups and downs are like. I have also basically experienced those and quite a lot of them. So it's been quite the idea since then.
And a small, quick word on the Solo Inter podcast as well.
Sorry, I lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I think that was a glitch. So the Solo Inter podcast, a quick word on that.
Yeah, so we have our own podcast known as the Solo Inter podcast. It's pretty straightforward. All we do is basically talk all things Inter, from news to previewing games and whatnot, and various topics like we are about to do a tier list now. We had one on Inter's current squad before the season began. Try to get guests here and there. Currently a bit inactive because of work, but we try to roll out content as frequently as possible.
Awesome. Next we move on to Sharath. Sharath, welcome to the podcast, and why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Sharath Nair. So this is my second stint in this podcast. I'm a Chelsea fan. I've been supporting Chelsea since 2013, and looking forward to this discussion with you on this. Yeah.
Awesome, great. And last we've got Vijay. Vijay, welcome to the podcast once again. It's been a while. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Good to be back, Paddy. So hey everyone, I'm Vijay. I'm a Bayern Munich fan and a Bengaluru FC fan. Been supporting Bayern Munich since 2008, post the Euro 2008. When I understood that my favorite German player of all time, Phillip Lahm, plays for a club called Bayern Munich, and I never looked back since. Good to be back on the podcast, Paddy.
Awesome, great. So, guys, let's start off with this. Let's not waste too much time. So, the first one's a little controversial in the sense that if you read, the Independent calls it the Qatar Investment Authority that owns PSG or Paris Saint-Germain. But here we are. So if you look at their worth, they're probably the richest, now second richest after the Saudi Public Investment Authority. But but the controversy is if it's Nasser Al-Khelaifi's net worth, he is further down the line. But we've kind of called it the Qatar Investment Authority or whatever they call themselves, sports authority that's probably owns PSG. So we put them high up. So Vijay, let's start off with you. How's the reign been? Because everyone probably expected. The market is what it is right now because of them. And what's their journey been like according to you?
Their journey has been a culmination of so much. They put in a lot of money, and that's putting it very mildly. And apart from maybe two blips where they lost the league to Lille last season, and I think a few seasons back to Monaco, they've pretty much been steamrolling France and building up a reputation of a club which actually has a history. So I'm not too familiar with Paris Saint-Germain, but from what I know, they do have a bit of a history back in the early 90s and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to create a new project. They're trying to create something more with a one of those long lost type of clubs. And while people will say all sorts of crap about money and stuff, I think nowadays money runs this damn sport. And what I hate about what they have done is they've destroyed the market. But eventually, putting in money is important. So I would say that if I had to rate this, I would put it pretty good because of the fact that they have actually proven their worth, and thankfully they lost to Bayern in the finals last season. But to make it that far, I'm pretty sure that's their culmination. They wanted to make it as far as that and even lift the holy grail of European football, and thankfully they didn't. But I'm torn between putting them between a silent stand and a pretty good, because they're going to lose Mbappe on a free after spending 180 million on him, and Neymar has a pretty shit mentality. I mean, if you go by his recent interviews, he's going to retire from the Brazil national team, I think only, but that's still a pretty sad way to look at it for someone who was touted to be one of the best of his generation.
Exactly.
And they spent close to 200 million on someone like him who's not been able to deliver as much as he probably could have. But otherwise, the results speak for themselves, and I'm not sure about their revenues, but they've done a solid job in being able to acquire Donnarumma on a free, Messi on a free. Obviously they're the only team that could pay Messi's wages, but still it's a big deal.
Well, I guess the second team would be the one that we'll talk about next. But yeah, I guess at that point when Messi was free, they were the only team. Let me put it that way. I think had a certain Jack Grealish not made it to Manchester, we would have been talking about it differently. But no, I completely agree. I think in terms of their investment to the club, it's been phenomenal. But the returns from a domestic perspective, I suppose, Parmeshwar, it's been very, very good. But you would expect that if you've put that much of money, the players that you've got, the European success would have come. Now, I don't know how much you think that's down to the investment made by the club owners or down to the coaches and their tactics at the end of the day.
See, in terms of domestic success, I think it's been, you can easily say it's highly successful because, yes, we can, casually call the league a farmers league, which I don't agree with, at least personally and whatnot, because PSG dominated once they started in 12-13, But, in terms of that Champions League thing, it's always been missing. I would say it's also down to hiring the right coach, because I feel personally when they had the right coach, who was Thomas Tuchel eventually, they never really backed him with the right players, in my opinion. I remember this whole controversy wherein Tuchel asked for a left back and Leonardo signed Mauro Icardi for him, and Icardi was pretty much out of form by that point, and his era at PSG has been below par. Like he's been awful, god awful at PSG. He misses tap-ins left, right, centers, and open goal tap-ins. And I'm not saying this out of hatred because of how his time at Inter ended, but it is a fact. And I feel, they could have in that last season with Tuchel at least have done something if they, gave him the right sort of signings. Like you can't give him Danilo Pereira and say, yeah, go win the Champions League final against Bayern Munich. You can't do that. And then, but what I feel about this ownership to begin with is when they started out in 12-13, it's not easy to get the likes of Zlatan and Thiago Silva from Italian champions AC Milan. That was, I think, to get those two players, the backbone of AC Milan back then was quite something. Yeah, and for basically almost nothing, like very, very reasonable rates. And then start winning the league thereon. I know, of course, as Vijay mentioned, there were a couple of blips, but these things tend to happen. They have pretty much won the league on majority of occasions. It's just, I don't know. I feel apart from Tuchel, you can make an argument that Ancelotti maybe could have done something in his time over there. But again, I feel under Ancelotti, they were like early days where they were still trying to figure out how to build a squad. Because you remember they brought in David Beckham just for, come on, you can't bring David Beckham at that point and say, I want to win the Champions League. It was more of a PR thing, and that was the time when they were building their brand as a club. Now you have PSG's esports team, you have them in multiple sports, not only football. That was the era when they were building things, and they started out with football and they needed personalities like Beckham and whatnot to build their brand. After that, you see players like, as you said, Neymar, the whole saga, pretty much ruined the transfer market. After you spend that kind of money, you at least have to win one UCL trophy. I mean, there's no excuse. I mean, if you're telling me Agnelli's Juventus, I mean, who weren't really bad, but I could say that, PSG's backing financially should be in that technically they should be reaching a final before Juventus. They should have at least won once. I mean, I don't get it because yes, now this season we never know, it's a possibility because they have everyone there. But if they don't win this season, it's going to be another embarrassment, in my opinion, at least. And I know this isn't like a video game or something wherein you expect all the star players to gel, and we have seen it in the Galacticos era at Real Madrid, never really worked out. But still, I mean, you see the disparity in football in the modern day. PSG, Manchester City, they're far ahead of any other team. Like like if you compare, let's say Italy's best team over the last 10 years, you obviously will pick Juventus out. And if you look at Juventus's condition right now, you might see the players there, but the financial mess they are in. And then when you compare it with PSG's situation overall, and then if you try to analyze the future, you'll be like, PSG should be easily winning one Champions League trophy down the line, maybe in a couple of years or 3 years down the road. So, I would say to Vijay's point, I think I'll still put them in pretty good, because in order to be the world's best boss, or in terms of investment and all that, I do feel Khelaifi has backed QSI has backed the club well, but then you can't be missing a Champions League trophy for like what now, almost a decade. Yeah, I mean, clubs like, I mean, even Bayern Munich
Spurs has made it.
Yeah, sorry.
Even Spurs has made it to the final.
Yeah, even Spurs and Ajax reached the semi-finals themselves. With the kind of mess Ajax themselves were in to what they are now. I mean, it's really hard for me to put them in world's best because they've not won the Champions League. I mean, and yeah, just to cap it off, I feel if this season is one they can't do it, then I really don't know what to say. Like, I really don't get it.
Then they can't. Shad, do you agree as well? Pretty good. Would you put him there?
Yeah, exactly. I would definitely put him in that matrix because of the reason that he's obviously not the world's best boss, because I agree with Parmeshwar, because considering the huge investment he has backed the club so much, but still won UCL. I think it is the ultimate dream of his the owners and the fans. They don't actually care about the citizen thing. They don't actually care about the winning the league one. Even if they lost against Lille, yes, that was a setback, but still they don't rate their objectives. They don't keep the objectives of winning the league one. So first, obviously, it would be winning the Champions League, then the rest follows. So
okay. No,
yeah.
I just let's move on because I want to get your thoughts now on this, which is Sheikh Mansour, Manchester City. For the longest time, it was Roman Abramovic who is known as the biggest money maker and the biggest sugar daddy in the Premier League. But here comes Sheikh Mansour, and I just want to know, what your thoughts are on how well he's invested there.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, he came at 2009. He took over the Man City regime, and from there on, it was like step by step, he improved the club. He like completely revolutionized the club from grassroots level to the level where Man City is now. Because if you look at, obviously they would be in top five of the top European clubs, Man City. So that must be given to, most of the credit must be given to him, his financial backing, everything. But still, everything said, they are also vying for the Champions League title, and they haven't got it until now. So yeah, previous season we beat them, fortunately. So yeah, because huge investments, they've been spending a lot under Pep Guardiola. They have been dominating the Premier League. That's a huge achievement, because winning three Premier League titles in 4 seasons is not an easy task, not at all. And yeah, that's a huge achievement. But still, Pep Guardiola's reign, even he would admit that his reign wouldn't be complete without a Champions League trophy in Man City. So I think his only the last fixer in the puzzle for the Man City era for Pep Guardiola is winning the Champions League, and he's desperately wants one. Is what I'm thinking.
And so, where would you put him in this list if it were you?
Yeah, I think same, pretty good would be the best.
But would you put him But would you put him better than Khelaifi or not?
I think better than Khelaifi. Yes, better than Khelaifi.
And Parmeshwar, would you agree with something like that or different views?
I mean, it's a pretty close one for me, at least, and I say this because now when I think of it from an overall perspective in terms of what was invested in PSG, because when I consider how behind their academy was in France and to what it is right now, because I consider the overall development of the club, not only the senior team, to the facilities they have right now, and of course Manchester City also have top-notch facilities and everything. I feel it's a pretty close one, but I would put Sheikh Mansour above Khelaifi for now, because I mean, after all, even I agree that the Premier League remains, of course, more competitive than the Ligue 1. I mean, and to win consecutive titles on that level, to invest on that level, and just to look at City Football Group's investment in general. It's just keeping Manchester City aside for a minute. You see what they did in India, invested in Mumbai City FC. I follow the team a lot. Bang average team all these years, suddenly come out of nowhere, win the ISL, sign good players, win the ISL. They have the right network in multiple continents. You know, they own Girona in Spain, again hub for Spanish players. That City scout at a younger age as well. New York City FC and whatnot. So they and with American talents on the rise at the moment. Revolution going on in USA. It's a pretty stable project overall. So yeah, I mean, I would put Sheikh Mansour above Khelaifi in my opinion, at least. But again, I maintain that it's a bit close. Like, I won't say there's a huge gap.
Fair enough. And Vijay? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so Parmeshwar was talking about, I also see the club development from the academy level to the first team level. So, justifying my point that Man City guy should be above Nasser Al-Khelaifi, because the reason that he also now, if you look at England, I rate, I'm not biased here, but Chelsea's academy is one of the best, if not the best.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. And second, and Man City is right up there. They are the talents in their academy is brilliant nowadays. So he actually has an eye on academy also. It is just not looking at the money or revenues or everything, but he's looking at the grassroots still, fostering everything that is happening. So he's managing everything. That's brilliant. That type of attitude an owner has. That's a brilliant thing.
Right, Vijay?
I would put them under world's best boss, simply because, touching on the same points which Sharad and Parmesh mentioned about, the overall development of the club. I'll just add two things what I feel. The shady sponsorship declarations and income sources aside,
Yeah.
the fact that you see their best players being paid peanuts in comparison, I say peanuts very liberally, by the way, in comparison to the some of the best players in other clubs. Because I might be wrong here, but I read an article which basically said that Kevin De Bruyne is only at 250K per week and Edison is only at 65K per week. The way they still manage to lure good quality players for dirt cheap level, when you look at the highest level, with the lure of saying, we will get you trophies, we will ensure you compete for trophies and get winners' medals. That is phenomenal. If you compare with, let's say a Paul Pogba, for example. I'm using Pogba because he's the easiest example to use, and I know it's going to get me a lot of stick, but don't really care about that.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. This is meant to be that controversial.
That, and also if you consider the academy thing, which both Parmesh and Sharad touched upon. One thing that I remember was in the Under-17 World Cup, 2 of England's best players came from that City Academy, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to stop there. With the fact that there's been so much development at the grassroots level, and they have people within the club who actually make players want to stay. I mean, De Bruyne said the main reason he joined City over Bayern was because they convinced him of the project and made him feel like he was valued. And look at in terms of the youth. Sancho obviously, unfortunately, didn't make it at City, but look at Phil Foden, and he was the best player in the Under-17 World Cup a few years back. So I think I would put them under world's best boss, in spite of the few side things about them being high spenders and the shady sources and stuff like that. I would still put them under world's best boss. But that's
fair enough. I also just want to say that apart from you're talking about football, I think the clubs, the City football group's also done a lot in terms of the city infrastructure and everything, like helping Manchester City, the surroundings and everything just much more developed, and they've actually invested, and their project is so sound in the sense that they've come in, they've said this is the and they've delivered, and whether they've not achieved the Champions League, fair enough. That they should have, but in terms of every step that they've taken, it just seemed to be the right step. Now, how they've gone about it, I guess that's where the shady part comes about it and all that. But the fact that they've
also their board of directors, like the board they have is much more professional. Like Ferran Soriano is the CEO of Man City, and Pixiki Bergstein, he's like he was the director in Barcelona when Barcelona was at that helm. So they know, they've been professional about it. It's not like they've been like splashing the money all over, but they know which band to cook, and
we say splashing the money. Like, fair enough that they spend, but what is that their highest spent the player that they spent the most on, the highest transfer for them must have been, I think, 70 or someone recently only that they got. Right? Sorry, Grealish, 100. But that was after a long time. I mean, for PSG, it was in the first.
And that also because if you watched Aston Villa's owner clarified, it was a release clause in his contract, so they couldn't have done much about it anyways.
Actually, I'm sure he would have wanted Messi.
Actually, everyone must have forgot the point that they were very close to a UEFA ban. And that ban was actually, it was revoked due to a technical something. I don't know the logic until now, but that's why they were very lucky to escape from that. So that's what I'm saying.
I mean, with those kind of owners, it's pretty obvious that eventually the outcome is.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it
talks at the end of the day.
Yeah, it definitely
does.
Of course. I'm going to put it pretty good because I think, but just because I think majority wins in this case. So sorry, Vijay, but your point is duly noted. Okay, Vijay, now we get to Dietrich Mateschitz, who is the Red Bull owner who owns RB Leipzig or Rasenball Sport Leipzig. So I just want to get your thoughts on his tenure as the owner there. How impressed or how not so impressed are you with how he's gone about his business?
Any German fan or any Bundesliga fan is going to absolutely hate what I have to say, but they have done stellar work, and they can talk about using a loophole and ensuring that the public owns. I mean, I don't know if my camera is visible, but the public owns at least 51% of the shares and stuff. But look, they've not splashed the money at all under at least at Leipzig, and I don't know. I'm not sure about New York Red Bulls, but even in Salzburg also they don't really splash the money. They build structures, they build setups, they build academies, they build a footballing. They've built a footballing ecosystem basically, and a talent factory, you could call it probably that. And basis that, and considering the fact that they've got teams competing at the highest level, they had Leipzig finish even second in the Bundesliga. It was a very, very big deal. So I just feel like they deserve a lot more credit than what they're getting. Since they've not really splashed much, and they're not I wouldn't say they're really out there. They've not been perennial achievers. They've been overachievers, but at a low level. I would put them purely under silent stand, just because the fact that they're making waves. They're not they're not right there in the headlines types. I would put them under silent stand just for that.
Yeah, it's fair because their model is built, and I think we did this in season 1. We did a case study on RB Leipzig as a podcast, and so if you that's a shameless plug-in. If you want to go listen to that, go do that. But their model was it was basically talent, like you said. It's a talent manufacturing plant. Like you build talent after talent, get them cheap, and then sell them for a profit. But at the same time, also achieve a reasonable amount of success. So whether it be coming from I think they were tier 4, and then they just climbed up right up to the Bundesliga in just a few years, which is crazy to for a club to do that. And like you mentioned,
very organically, might I add, they didn't splurge the money as what people are making it out to be.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, like you mentioned, and also known as probably the Bundesliga's most hated club. It is, you can argue all about that, how they've gone about doing that. But I mean, I don't think Mateschitz is going to care about that, given that his team is constantly performing at the highest level. Whether it be getting to I think they got to the Champions League semi-final a couple of years ago. I know it was a one-legged tie, but they still got there. Or, narrowly, or actually putting up a title charge against the mighty Bayern. It's crazy.
I mean, if you think about it, in less than 12 years of their existence, they made it to the Champions League semi-final. Obviously, they lost out in a very convincing manner, but to make it that far, one-legged ties or whatever may be the case, it is bloody impressive, because you wouldn't put a Leipzig squad like that. I mean, with all due respect to Leipzig, and they are really good. They're really a good team that can challenge for the Bundesliga. Against the European elite, you definitely wouldn't put them in the favorites for a Champions League semi-final spot.
And in that season, if I'm not wrong, they beat Atletico Madrid also.
Yeah.
Yes, we got knocked out.
And to add to just or to what like Mateschitz has done so far. See, of course, there are a lot of ethical problems with what Red Bull as a group do in football in general, but even to find such loopholes in general is not easy. Once they started out, clubs like Hanover and Hoffenheim started the anti-50+1 bandwagon, that they want the 50+1 rule abolished and whatnot, because of course it does not allow for large investment. And then, and to find a loophole wherein you brand your employees as your members who own the club, it's not easy. On top of that, I would just like to highlight the network they've built. Leipzig, the Red Bull project was never, as Vijay said, was never going to be about high investment on one player or couple of players. It was always about building the right kind of network. And they started investing in African players when nobody else really was. And I mean at a younger age, high potential African players. People would ideally sign mid-aged or over, let's say overaged African players. Let's say 26 plus, 30 plus. But these guys started discovering talent like Patson Daka, Sadio Mane at a younger age, Naby Keita at a younger age. I know Keita right now has been a tad bit injury prone for you, but of course his spell before Liverpool was quite something. And it's not only that, to get directors like Ralf Rangnick to oversee all of this for all these years since 2012, if I'm not mistaken, and to put so much faith in him from Mateschitz end, it's quite something, because he actually oversaw this project up until he left and almost joined AC Milan, and he did. But I mean, as much as one can dislike them, you have to say this project, in my opinion at least, will be very sustainable for years to come, because now you see, they, the Nagelsmann left, they had Marsh come in, they discovered coaches like Marco Rose and whatnot. So it's always there, the network they've built, and also the, let's say, popularity of football they've built up in East Germany, because East Germany was not really known for football in general. They had smaller teams, Lokomotiv Leipzig and whatnot. So the culture they've bought in East Germany is quite something. And yeah, I mean, as much as one might not like it, and however controversial it sounds, you have to say that they've done a pretty tremendous job, and this is a very sustainable future in that sense.
And where would you put him then?
Just to add to one thing which Parmesh said, he touched upon Ralph Rangnick. Again, solid decision making by Mateschitz and his top notch. His top end team, the leadership team, because you get a guy who knows his football, and Rangnick, he is. Yeah. I wouldn't call him royalty, but he is football folklore in his own right.
Yeah.
So to get someone like him to create a system in place is a huge win, and it speaks volumes of them trying to do things right. So,
and I'm also not surprised by the fact that now Newcastle are looking at Rangnick because I mean, anyone in their right mind would, if you're going to build a project and if you've got like something that you want to achieve, there's no doubt that he is one of the first names on that list. But all right, Parmeshwar, where would you put him? So we just had him under silent stand, even though he's done well, but in comparison to, it's obviously relative. So
it's a tough one for me, because I think it was you or Vijay that mentioned New York Red Bull, right? One of you guys. But then when I look at New York Red Bulls, what happened with them was, earlier they were the focus of Red Bull Group, and once Leipzig became their focus, they completely neglected New York Red Bull, and the fans were really pissed off after that. So in that sense, now that I was initially planning on putting them in the lower end of pretty good, but then I have to go with silent stand when I think of clubs like New York Red Bull and Bragantino in Brazil, who have not really worked out so far in terms of the Red Bull model. Only Leipzig has. Basically, others have now. Salzburg now. And where I fault Mateschitz in this is that, because the fact is that all these clubs were made to believe that they would be the focal point, at least within their continent, if not the country. If you look at Bragantino and Red Bull, but they were not. They were completely neglected eventually for Leipzig. So I have to put them in silent stand in that sense, at least.
Fair enough. Sharath, would you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Silent stand would be the perfect place for them. The reason that Leipzig's journey has been very, very brilliant in this recent years, because their investment in youth and also making success out of it. It is very much for me as a football, as a neutral football fan. If you look at that point of view, it would give us much more satisfaction than like spending $200 billion or something and getting a Champions League trophy. But still, Leipzig reached the semi-final and they beat Atletico Madrid. So that match was like Simeone. It is very hard to actually tactically outbattle Simeone. And Julian Nagelsmann did that with his Leipzig, with his young, vibrant Leipzig team. And also, he has been like Leipzig. Now he's been creating and developing so much young talents. For example, like Upamecano, Konate was joined Liverpool. Upamecano to Bayern Munich. There's Lima. There's so many players if you look at that. And now like that Hungarian guy from back. Yeah.
And then you had Sabitzer who went to Bayern as well. And
Sabitzer. Yeah. And Naby Keita was there. So many players were there. Nkunku, so many players were there. So and the players, the young players now also look at Leipzig as a stepstone for them to actually grow and develop their career. So that is a very big achievement for Leipzig. Yeah, the silent stand will be the perfect place for that.
Awesome. Parmeshwar, Agnelli and his Juventus tenure. When did he take over?
See, now, if in theory the Agnelli family as a whole have been owning Juventus since 1923 or something, or 1947. There were two spells. Initial spell was 23, and then you had 1947. But Andrea Agnelli himself took over in 2010. That's after all the Serie B chaos and whatnot, after the Calciopoli scandal where they were relegated, and then Of course, they had to rejuvenate themselves because Inter was dominating. So yeah, I mean, just to begin with, I would say, I mean, yes, they have not won the Champions League, so that is definitely a big bummer for them because the whole point of bringing Ronaldo was to win it at least once in his tenure. That was the whole point of the Ronaldo project. While I don't brand Ronaldo as the problem, I do brand the whole entire Ronaldo project as a failure because his arrival was not really complemented with the right kind of players. People bash Sarri for his spell at Juventus, but he never really got the players he asked for. What Pirlo got is what Sarri wanted, and if you're giving someone who's never coached the players, the ex-coach wanted, it doesn't really make sense. Sarri himself had said in his spell that this team was uncoachable, and I don't really blame him. The way they won the league that season was primarily because Inter were bad and messed up in those few games, and it was the first season under Conte. And if Inter were better, they would have won it that season too. But in his overall spell, let me get back to 2020 to hire the best CEO in Italian football, who's currently with Inter, Beppe Marotta. The guy is a visionary with Sampdoria. He's taken a Sampdoria side to the Champions League with his directorial skills, the kind of players he's found. He saw something in a useless player like Cassano and still made it work at Sampdoria. Then to go to Juventus and then put faith in someone like Antonio Conte just to rebuild themselves. A team that finished 7th in the league to then take a year's gap and then start winning the league for 9 years in a row is quite something. People might look back and say, Juventus, it was a walkover for Juventus. But it's not that simple, Yes, AC Milan and Inter deteriorated, but then likes of Napoli and AS Roma were right there to challenge for the Scudetto. Beppe Marotta, the guy has exceptional footballing knowledge. Like people might just look at him as a director, but to give Conte the players he always wanted, people called him out for selling Pogba to United, but that actually worked out in his favor, in a way. He didn't really miss out on losing. They didn't really miss out on losing the league or anything. They lost the Champions League final, fair enough, but then you can put that on Allegri or whatnot. You can say Allegri is a tad bit too pragmatic for his own good. But to sign players to, this guy, I would more than Agnelli. I mean, yes, I give Agnelli credit for putting faith in Marotta. But if Marotta was not the CEO of Juventus, I think they would have been worse off because he literally stole Dybala from Inter on the last day, of Dybala's move, Palermo contract, whatnot. So without him, I feel Juventus would have failed. But the fact that it obviously all happened, you have to give Agnelli props. And where I feel Agnelli botched, is the post Allegri era, because Allegri, when he complained that Juventus don't have the right kind of players, they were using a regressed Matuidi, they were using a regressed Khedira, and that's not what wins you the Champions League. Come on, even if you have Ronaldo. And you have a Chiellini and Bonucci that can't stay fit for an entire season, that's not going to win you a Champions League. Allegri called this out. Agnelli didn't listen to him. He rather even let Marotta go. And the biggest mistake you can make is Marotta go to your biggest rivals in Italy. You can't do that. You look at what he has done for us. He signs players for fun. He signed Alexis. He made United give Alexis to us on a free by terminating his contract and whatnot. And we won the league under him. So you can't make that mistake. He left the entire management on current Spurs sporting director Fabio Paratici, who people might hail for his signings, but he's not that good. Trust me. All he does is look at what Marotta does and then just looks at this, tries to sign the same people. For example, Paratici once went to a restaurant making his transfer list and he forgot it there, and people actually took photos and circulated it on Twitter. And that this is real. And this is not fake. You can find this news. So that's Paratici for you. People might call him brilliant, but he's not.
Perfect Spurs accusation, Paratici.
yeah. I mean, it goes hand in hand, I guess. So the image first said that Tonali was their first priority, and look who's got Tonali right now, AC Milan. So that says a lot, and that's where he messed up. He should have listened to Marotta and stuck by him, and probably they would have got their 10th Scudetto in a row. You would call them. So
where would you put him there?
9 Scudetto is not in a row is not easy, man. I would say pretty good, but now this is where I'm conflicted. Do I put him with Khelaifi or not? Because it's hard, because damn it, their influence in Italy is too big, man. Like, see, yes, they haven't won in they haven't won the UCL, but their influence in Italy is too powerful. Like, he owns newspaper publications. He can write whatever nonsense he wants. Jesus. I would say pretty good, man. It's tough, but pretty good. Now, where I don't know, it's really hard. I would say lower end. You can go for that, man. At least in my opinion. And just to cap off my thoughts, just before we move on to others. Sorry for rambling on, but it's the thing that you can't. The fact that he could right after their financial errors, you must have seen the news that they have recorded the most losses in Italian football, like the second highest team after Inter, of course, to have the second most losses. Yet he has the ability to pump in his own money to cover for losses, whereas clubs like Inter have no money coming from China. AC Milan aren't as strong financially. His parent company, Exor Group, that owns Juventus, just casually pumped in 400 million to cover for costs. So that's his power at the end of the day. So you have to give credit where it's due. As much as I hate them, so I'll put them in pretty good, but the lower end at least.
Vijay, Sharad, any thoughts on this, or would you agree with that?
I would agree in terms of the ranking. I would put him in the same category. I would put him above Khelaifi though, simply because look, Khelaifi is pumped in way more money, and the COVID factor aside, I think Juventus have done a far more remarkable job. Yes, the Ronaldo project didn't work out. Yes, it probably must have been a waste of money from the grander scheme of things, but 9 Scudetto in a row is very impressive, and I think they've done at least 5, if I'm not wrong, five doubles and 2 Champions League finals. Now, losing the Champions League final obviously sucks, but to make it that far is still a big deal. So I would definitely call that a pretty good achievement on a full front if we consider the last 10 years. I would rank him above Khelaifi.
Fair enough.
Sure.
Same thing, same opinion. I would rate him above.
Just before we move on, the type of transfer deals they do. Chiesa for a 2-year loan deal obligation for like 40 million, wherein they're only paying 10 million per year, and then Locatelli, the way they signed Locatelli, again using their influence over clubs, just have to give it to them. Unfortunately,
the way they do business also is very
it's because of the influence they have as a family. So I mean, but then you have to give credit.
There's this running gag, at least when it came to Bayern Munich for one point in time, like we either sign players on a free or we sign players only on release clauses, and that the release clause gag is still there. If you look at the past few years, Juventus had that gag with free transfers, but most of those free transfers really came good. So that's something that needs to be admired and acknowledged. If you ask me.
Exactly. All right, Sharad, Roman Abramovich, the OG, one of the OGs of the richest football club owners. So tell us a bit about what he's done for your club. What has he done for Chelsea?
Okay, so first things first, he will go right in the worst category. Okay, so 2004, everybody knows that year is the year that every rival club tries to troll us or patronize us or something. Yeah, so at the time he took over, we were not one of the big sides or something, but still we had history. It's not unlike other people would say that we don't have history or anything. Yeah. So from the moment Roman Abramovich took off, I don't see he was like completely involved in whatever was happening in Chelsea, from the grassroots level till the first team. Everything, he was very passionate. To be honest, I will be biased, but still, I don't think passionate owner like Roman Abramovich. I haven't seen someone like him in this modern era of football. And actually, you guys can quote in some examples other than Roman Abramovich, because he will come into your matches, even though he has some issues with the visas and all. He doesn't like come often to England or something, but still he will make sure that in the Champions Finals he was there with his family. In Champions League 2012, also he was there with his family, celebrating everything. And whenever he has got he pumps in money when he thinks that everything will be going. He is a visionary. He sees if the club is going in a good path, he will pump in money. He would support. He would back the coach and everything. I remember John Terry saying in his farewell speech, like specifically mentioning Roman Abramovich. He was right there at Stamford Bridge, saying that this man is great. He looks from the small children, under 8s, under 12s in that category, till the first team. So that's the influence of this. There were times where like there was speculation that Roman Abramovich would be leaving and was selling the club. So we could, as Chelsea fan, we could not just imagine him going. He's the like face of Chelsea Football Club, to be honest.
Vijay, apart from that, in terms of even like we look at women's football and the sort of success they've seen, and the influence he's had over there. You look at their youth loan system, right, which is probably one youth academy, which has been one of the best. They've loaned I think the most number of youth talent across to help them develop, and then his model is to either the best come to the first team, the rest you loan out and you sell for a profit. And apart from that, even helping Chelsea is something similar to what Mansour's done at Manchester to help even Chelsea, the infrastructure, everything else around it. But apart from that, where do you see him on this list?
I'm considering the names that are there. I would definitely put him under world's best boss. And I mean, it's weird when it comes from a Bayern Munich fan considering 2012. But the fact is, you mentioned everything. Like, how much he's done, how much has been done for the club. Like everything that Sharath has quoted is absolutely spot on. And I think there was a running joke which was there that Chelsea ain't got no history. He gave them the bloody history in 17 years now. He's got more Champions League than some of the biggest clubs in England itself. He made them into perennial winners. He got the right people at the right time. Sometimes he might be a bit too hands-on. I think with the Carlo Ancelotti episode, I think he got him personally sacked or something like that went down. I remember reading it in his autobiography. But you can't deny that what he's done for the club. Like he's made the youth set up a talent holding factory, which is basically a loaning factory. He's got the team winning trophies, even in the slumps as well. I think they still managed the Europa League during what was supposed to be a slump period as well. I might be wrong here, so Sharath could probably correct me where I'm wrong here. But considering the praise that is there and how he really shows that passion for Chelsea, and the results speak for themselves. And he's not. I mean, he might be the OG money splurger, but the results have dictated everything, and the accolades are there for everyone to see, both in the men's and women's team. So I would put him under world's best boss under these if I had to rank.
And I know he did sign for the ESR, but he was one of the first people to actually pull out and say, no, like we're not. Actually, but that helped a bit.
Yeah, actually, we weren't initially approval of the plan. Actually, we went with the bad bracket, like we went with the pro that everybody's joining, so we have to also join because if they are getting so much revenue,
you still join. That's not. It's like if people say your friends jumped into the well, will you jump as well? But you've jumped in, so you've pulled out first. I mean that sounds wrong, but you backed away. You backed away first. That's fine, some solace, but the fact. Parmeshwar, would you agree with that? And let's move on.
Yeah, you have to put him in world's best boss because I think Sharath and Vijay pretty much summed it up. But just to add on top of that, I think what Chelsea have built with their academy is also fantastic overall because it has definitely grown to be England's one of best academies along with Manchester City's. And you could put some other academies there as well. But I think what their run in the youth league few years ago was a good one. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, you lost in the final to Porto, if I'm not mistaken. If I can't really recall properly. But yeah, I think my highlight for Chelsea, apart from all their signings in general and the current squad and to get Tuchel on board, is their youth academy. I think it definitely is one of the world's best and probably the best in England as well. Because I think Sharath and Vijay pretty much summed up the other reasons. Like, as Vijay said, even in one of their worst years, sort of, they won the Europa League. And I mean, even to do that, and as you can go on and discredit the Europa League as much as you want, it still is an important trophy at the end of the day. So even to get that done and then that Champions League final versus Bayern and whatnot, and to win it again, of course, versus City, that too with a managerial change, I think it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, Tuchel is a tactical genius. Let's not forget.
I think even the first one was because of during a managerial change with Di Matteo. like
yeah,
midway.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, but still, to win it midway is quite something, and then to show the financial strength to retain the squad plus get players like Lukaku and of course bolster the team. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, when they had their partial transfer ban because of that youth player thing, they were the ones after that, and during the pandemic almost you could still spend because of their policy. And then of course, just to cap off, you have a brilliant person like Marina in the club, so you can't really who brokered that Nike deal, as they
Yeah.
say in the past.
Yeah.
So you have to put him in the world's best post.
I
Awesome.
think the only demerit.
Wait, Ashad, we'll have to go through this quickly. I'm sorry, but also, so let's talk about Phillip Anschutz. Now, anyone knows about how LA Galaxy is done recently? Anyone here?
I can give you a brief insight from what I've, because I tend to watch MLS at times and whatnot. So, from my understanding, from what I've followed and read in general, is that there was even a point with LA Galaxy where that in ML, in American football, American soccer in general in the 90s, where of course fan culture wasn't as prosperous. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but LA Galaxy were one of the first teams, or probably the first team to own their own stadium, and I'm pretty sure he was behind it from what I have gathered overall. And to get that done in an era where you don't really have a fan culture going about football, and that was the case for almost a decade after the 90s. American soccer culture at least grew around properly after 2000s and not until the 2000s. And then if you remember, they signed players like Zlatan back in the day, of course. Landon Donovan became a big thing back in the day. And I think LA Galaxy were one of the early bloomers of American soccer, if you will. Like, they were the earliest successful team. But from my understanding, again, what they're more known for is to build more of their community than recent success, because they've not won much recently. You have other teams coming up, of course. More teams. MLS has become more competitive.
Yeah.
You had this spell where Atlanta United was doing well. Then, of course, Frank de Boer fucked things up. But LA Galaxy, I think they were more known for their community building with Hispanics and whatnot. And I think Anschutz prioritized that more than trophies, in my understanding. Again, at least, I could be wrong. But from what I have gathered over the years, their focus, of course, any club wants to win a trophy, but even when you consider MLS's wage system and financial system, how it works, you can't just sign anyone freely. There is a wage cap, and it's pretty rigid. So to get that done, to get players like Zlatan on board even after that, and if your aim is community development, I think in that sense they've done a decent job. Again, from my understanding at least, but I think the trophies haven't really been there in recent times that way, at least.
But I guess it's more. I guess we're looking at from a club's point of view. Some trophies would play. So where would we put him if?
Jeez, this is tough, man. I mean, there's a lot of context, right? Because you see how rigid the American soccer system is. Like,
True. True.
From our perspective, because we support European clubs at least, so we expect it to be more flexible.
Yeah, but we should be a little more lenient to them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So a silent stand.
Yeah, silent stand would be fair, I think, because silent stand would be fair below Mateschitz, of course.
Of course.
I can't put him above that, but I think because I think yes, MLS is a tad bit more competitive right now, but even with that, I think a club like LA Galaxy should be thereabouts for winning a trophy, which they haven't been there for quite some time. So yeah.
Okay. Vijay or Sharad, any thoughts on this, or should I just straight away put?
Because I don't follow the MLS at all. I've never heard of this dude ever. So
right.
I'm just going by Tanisha's ranking.
Yeah, perfect. I guess Sharad's nodding as well. Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
And the next one is great. Next one is great.
So can I just put them here? I think we all agreed.
I think soccer will be.
Yeah, isn't it soccer could be better lower end, I guess. Yeah. I mean, then we could.
There's no lower end yet.
I know that. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have anyone else. I think. What has he done? He's not for so many years. He's not invested in the team, and let Arsene Wenger probably run the team. And then when Arsene Wenger, he probably taken too long to probably sack Arsene Wenger, or he shouldn't have sacked Arsene Wenger, whichever way you look at it as an Arsenal fan. So that decision didn't happen. And then when he took the decision.
You know what I fault him for, kind of might sound strange, because the last couple of years of sorts, he started spending, and then he's created this massive doubt in fans' minds that this guy can actually invest. And we all knew that. I think there was never a doubt he can spend, because I think if you look at his rugby team, he spent a lot for them. I don't know what it's called or what not, but I remember reading
Rams.
Some Rams. I remember reading an article because he spent
he changed. He changed even states and teams.
So he is. I mean, see, look at the whole Wenger scenario. Maybe yes, he should have sacked Wenger way before. But there was that huge banter era where they didn't invest much. You had players like Shamak and whatnot. And I mean, yes, they won the FA Cup, but it's been over a decade they've not won the league. Like, what do you say? Like, I mean, that has to come down to poor overall.
I mean, I would say the FA Cup's more to do with Wenger than it is to do with
of course.
But Vijay, what were you saying something before?
I would say I wouldn't call him Mike. I wouldn't put him on the Mike Ashley because that's the absolute worst of the lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I put him under Isn't It Soccer because look, the guy has money, and I don't know if it was because of the stadium death situation they had with the Emirates Stadium, because I have a friend who's like a hardcore Arsenal fan since the 90s, and he told me that Wenger stuck around. He signed a 5-year deal back in the early 2000s or something to stay with Arsenal in spite of the debt, because that was apparently one of the collateral terms. So I think maybe it was probably in Wenger's thing that, I can achieve with a bunch of underrated boys, even if it doesn't necessarily amount to a trophy. Maybe I think that sort of mentality allowed Kroenke to keep his cushion going.
But we also know that we've always said that had Wenger kept his team similar, because he had Van Persie, he had Fabregas, he had Nasri. Had he kept that team and maybe invested a little more, that team was actually a very, very, very good team that could have challenged for the title. The fact is that
I'll tell you what my gripe is with this dude. This dude has made the ticket prices for an Arsenal game the most affordable in the whole of England. And that's what pisses me off, because that's the typical American way. I mean, if any American listeners are listening, I don't know if you guys are going to get offended. But the fact is, you don't make, first of all, football has become a very business-oriented sport. And I know, prices are sky high everywhere. Even, I see Bundesliga prices, I'm like, that's still costly for an Indian guy. But it's definitely cheaper than looking at an Arsenal game's price. So I'm just like, this guy is like, I don't know if he's trying to earn his revenues through gate attendances, because that's not in football. That is never your main source of income. Sponsorships and merchandise sales are to make a game as unaffordable, to create a banter, to be an enabler. I won't say he created, I'll say to be an enabler of the banter area, and to give people like Troops, DT, Robbie, and all these guys a platform for them to become famous is. As much as they give us laughs, it's cringe, and it's in a way it's like, dude, really?
No, I agree. I just wanted someone down there, Mike Ashley there, but I don't think we're gonna have that. But
also,
in terms of
just to add to the ticket price thing, I think there was an instance where Bayern Munich fans had boycotted like the first 5-10 minutes of a Champions League match because of the high prices as well. And for what Arsenal,
that was in 2016.
And for what Arsenal offers in that case, for the prices they set, it's.
As a Liverpool fan, I know, because our owners who are also Americans tried to increase the prices, and then we had massive walkouts and all of that, and then they were like, okay, no, we won't. But this guy's just done it, and people are still buying. The fact is that Emirates still sells out almost every other week. It's crazy, but it's sad that he's kind of exploited the situation that I've been at the Emirates Stadium. It's a very good stadium, but whether it's worth that much, I don't think so. I don't think a football ticket should cost that much anyway. Okay, let's move on to this Parmeshwar, your owner, Zhang Jindong, if that's what he's called. But I think his son kind of runs the operation, Steven Zhang. But what have you made of his sort of tenure at Inter?
So of course they took over in 2016. It's not been that long really. Before that, I would say, just to give an overview, the club was in a much worse condition than what it is now. So I have to give them credit for improving the stature of the club, for bringing it back to where it should be ideally. But there is this common thing that recency bias tends to prevail amongst fans. So of course we have a lot of irate fans because of the financial situation at the club right now, wherein we have recorded the highest loss in Italy because we can't pump in money from China anymore because of their new law as per the government, which states that you can't export capital on luxury goods, and sports comes under luxury goods for them. So that's been the biggest bummer, because if that wasn't the case, they would have spent, like, Conte would have stayed today, Hakimi would have stayed, Lukaku would have stayed, and we would have signed 2-3 more players. That's the reality. And yes, whereas as far as Suning Holdings, who own Inter, again owned by Zhang Jindong, go, they since they took over, they've had the right sporting vision in that sense. They knew that they had to build a base. 2016 was an average year. They were figuring things out in football. They didn't really know much, so I can give them a pass. But after that, they hired Spalletti. They knew that Spalletti is a coach who's never missed out on Champions League football while coaching an Italian team. Who took Roma to the Champions League, took Udinese to the Champions League once. He did it with Inter 2 years in a row. Then after that, they realized that yes, you have to take the next step now. You can't keep just qualifying for the Champions League. Went out and got Antonio Conte, despite his high salary demands, despite his specificity of staff selection, because he's very picky about who he wants. And we still give him his high salary staff, which again I have to give them credit for. The marketing of the club went through the roof. We did marketing campaigns that boomed the club's popularity on social media and whatnot. They were literally in China. You have literally Inter-themed malls. That's how much Inter grew in China.
Wow.
That's how big Inter became. As per a poll, it was also the most supported sports team for a bit, not all time, but that's again from the banter era wherein Inter finished 9th only let's say 6-7 years ago in 2013. My bad. To have that kind of popularity, I have to give them credit. I can't deny that. But the situation has gotten to a point where yes, you blame the Chinese government, you can point all fingers at them, but there were also certain things they didn't do right. Like Inter have a lot of Chinese sponsors in the club, wherein you're very reliant on them. So because there's no investment from China, even the sponsors are defaulting now. Basically 60 million in sponsors hasn't reached the club, and that's a lot of money for an Italian team. When you look at the disparity in terms of what an English team earns.
It's sad that I'm saying it's sad that like when Inter sort of were growing or becoming that team, it's unfortunate that the government says, okay, you can't invest anymore. But I get your point that also the fact that they haven't probably hedged their sponsorship deals or whatever.
Yeah, so the thing is, you can call those things a bit more fictitious because they literally Suning literally sponsors our training ground, and of course that's to inflate revenues. But then if you overload the club with Chinese sponsors and if you hit such a roadblock, you're not going to get any money. And this is what happened with AC Milan in a few years ago, and this is the exact problem they faced, and their owner ended up selling them. And this is the chance Zhang had in before the ESL, before the whole ESL shenanigans began. He had a chance to sell Inter to a hedge fund called BC Partners, British based, for 800 million, but he wanted 1 million because he thought that ESL would go ahead. So because if you read that the signing on ESL fee was 300 million itself, so that would have eliminated half our debt there just with that money. So he thought the ESL would go ahead, so he never really sold Inter, and this is the mess we are in. We are relying on loans. We have no money coming in apart from ticket revenue. So that's the harsh reality.
So where would you put him at the end of the day?
Tough. I think
it's not a long tenure anyway. It's been a short.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it tough, because it's gone from a high to a sort of a low in fans' perception. I would say silent stand, but I guess above Anschutz would be right, because even to win the league after 11 years, to know what you're up against teams like Juventus and a more competitive league in general, from the past years when Juventus dominated majority of it. So I think I would put him above Anschutz in that sense, at least.
Okay.
But below,
Vijay and Sharad, any thoughts on this, or that's fine?
After he Zhang took over, I think Inter Milan, the Scudetto win was a justification of the work he has put in. And also Antonio Conte. I'm a big fan of Antonio Conte because the acquisition of Antonio Conte was
Wait, Sharad, I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Yeah,
Sharad, you're breaking up.
and on top of that, he
I don't think.
was able to win the league because Antonio Conte is one of the
I think we've lost.
We've lost Sharad. Vijay, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So,
Okay, let's get to Hop, because I know that you've got to leave as well. So let's get to Hop first. So what's his take on, like, where would you kind of rank him at?
I'd put him under silent stand, above Anschutz for sure. Not much of an achiever. Like, they've not really won trophies as such, but they've built a solid system in place. Like, if I'm in terms of grassroots also, they had a system in place where the youth teams used to challenge for youth Bundesliga levels, and that's pretty impressive. They've not. I think they've only been relegated once till now after making it from the bottom flight, and people can say whatever they want about an individual investor coming in and pumping huge money through becoming one of the largest shareholders, but it's still an achievement in itself. And let's put it this way: from 2012-13, where they were relegation battlers, to 2016, if I'm not wrong, no, 2015, when again they were relegation battlers, to putting faith in a guy like Nagelsmann to set up the whole system, who took them to Champions League not once but twice in a row, got them to their best ever finish in in 2017-18, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 17-18. To a slight dip now, but they're slowly coming back. I think they think they can be challenging for an ECL spot at the very least. I would put them under silent stand because there's been ups and downs, but definitely, I mean, if for a pure football fan, if they read, they'll at least have that thing like, not bad at all. And that's pretty much my reaction. I mean, I follow Bundesliga a little more closely, so I would feel like this is pretty good. But for the typical neutral or the casual fan per se, it'd be like, not bad at all. And that's why I would put under silent stand. Definitely under Anschutz. Zhang, I'm not sure because Zhang's achieved a lot more with Inter.
Okay. Parameshwar.
I think Vijay sort of summed it up, because again, Hoffenheim themselves have come under a lot of under the microscope, because again, private investment, and they have been criticized for again not having proper fan culture, because they come from like a small village with less people and whatnot, and because of that, and if you compare it with Leipzig in a way, they're sort of there on their own merit, I feel, because from basically having such a small fan base to then investing in the club just to sustain the academy mainly, more than high investment, and then hiring someone like Nagelsmann, as Vijay said, and then taking them to the Champions League, I think that's a pretty good move. And again, I feel that to go against 50+1 is not easy, and they are one of the few clubs to go against it, like publicly voicing their opinion. So I have to give them credit there. I can't really, I agree with Vijay. I think just above Anschutz and below Zhang.
Perfect. Welcome back, Sharad. So let's get this probably the last proper person here, and he's Guo Guangchang. He is the owner of Wolverhampton Wolves. Again, I suppose they're probably the most solid mid-table club out there. They constantly challenge for what we would call the 6-7 Europa. Now would be call it Conference League spot. At least under Nuno, they've been constant thorns in the sides of the big six. They were all obviously the ones that were difficult to beat. They, for some reason, I'm not a huge fan, because I felt like the club's kind of run by George Mendes rather than Guo Guangchang, just for the fact that they have all of the Portuguese players that they can get their hands on. But I mean, I guess like Dietmar Hopp, he's invested a decent amount. The decisions have been all right, but I mean, they haven't achieved much, but that's kind of where they are at. They've achieved the fact. I mean, getting up to that mid-table itself is somewhat of an achievement for them to constantly be there. I think Wolves, when they came in, people thought, okay, maybe the first year they thought, okay, they'd overachieved. And then everyone thought they'd be fighting for relegation. And at one point, they were kind of doing that. But then again, he bounced back. You've got Adama Traore out there and, Raul Jimenez. And, at the back, you had Rui Patricio, the Moutinho, who's the other guy? Ruben Neves as well.
Ruben Neves.
So,
and also just to highlight, yes, you could say that their run in the championship is where they blew away other teams and to get promoted after so many years, because of course they had better backing overall, but to still be there, because you see teams like Norwich and Fulham just be yo-yo teams every season, come and go. I mean, probably Norwich will face the same fate.
Or even like a Newcastle or someone like that, right? I mean, historically rich clubs or Southampton or something, they always are fighting at relegation or slightly higher. But these guys are fighting up there with the Evertons and the,
I think
Arsenals.
We should give Wolves a lot of credit, because sustaining that position, position in Premier League is very difficult.
And also to what you said, Sharad, because yes, you said that it was you, Pradyum, that the Jorge Mendes connection can be a bit annoying, because where he just comes in with their players and you pretty much sort of obliged to buy it, but you still have him as a connection, so that's sort of a plus point as well at the same time, which other mid-table and lower table clubs don't have. So that pretty much guarantees your sustainability over the years. They might all end up being Portuguese players, but most of them are pretty decent quality players. And with
I guess also helped that the coach was Portuguese as well. You could look at that.
And they also had the Europa League run wherein they faced Sevilla in the quarterfinals, and it was a pretty close game as well. So, I mean, it's a pretty good job done, I feel. If you consider their objectives, I don't think they obviously yet aim for a Champions League position or whatnot. And yes, last season wasn't really good for them. Nuno's final, but I think it's a pretty well done job overall. I think the key word, as Sharad said, was sustaining their presence in the Premier League. So
I don't know. I probably maybe put him above Hopp because of the I don't know, or below.
No, I wouldn't because of the simple fact that you can say, I mean, whoever says Premier League is competitive more than Bundesliga, beg to differ. But let's look at this. Hoffenheim went from relegation to third place in 2 years.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
And also, I would like to highlight a different side of thing, which, as you said, of Hoffenheim's recent investment in their women's team has been immense, to the point wherein they're doing well in the Women's Champions League as well. So I think, considering the youth development, the women's side of thing and whatnot, I would put him above, below Hoffenheim.
Hopp. And above Anschutz.
Above
Anschutz, I think, is just because we couldn't put him anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like Anschutz.
Of course. And
he's won a lot more trophies than the people ahead.
Hopp has to be, at least in my opinion, above. He has to be, and Sharad is the only one who.
Sharad, would you agree? Yeah,
I would agree with it.
Awesome. So now we come to the final person. This is obviously speculative, which is Saudi Arabia's takeover over Newcastle United. After months and months of speculation of whether it happened. How much do you guys perceive this to be a good buy, and how much of a success do you perceive this to be, given that we've seen two of the Middle Eastern clubs in pretty good. So we know if they have set a goal, they kind of do follow it. But being Newcastle United has its own challenges. So, but also it could be. I mean, they're a historical club. That's not unlike. I mean, City might say they probably a little less than Newcastle, but Newcastle in the Premier League had a little more history until City was bought over. So Vijay, how successful do you see it be, and where would you rank him as a speculation right now?
Speculatory, I'd put them under silent stand for two reasons. One, look, they might come out all guns blazing. I'd expect them to be a little more prudent because look, if you manage to get them to be title challengers in, let's say, year 2 or year 3, how are you going to keep the fans satisfied? I support a team. Parmesh will know about this. That Bengaluru FC day one, champions in year one. To keep that run going, to keep that interest and form going, is not the easiest of things. And if you develop an expectation among fans and you have a tough season, it's going to be bad. I think what they need to establish more is, they don't lose their identity. Maybe pump in the money, but get the right people who identify with the Toons, with the St. James Park regulars. Continue that culture per se, because I mean, I have a friend who's a hardcore Newcastle fan since 98 or 99, and he's like, I told him, dude, isn't this worse than Mike Ashley being? There's like nothing can be worse than Mike Ashley being there. So they see this as some sort of a great white hope. I think the key would be still maintaining that culture, while slowly building their competitiveness. Maybe start at the Wolves level or something like that. But in the long run, obviously, if you're going to have a sugar daddy funding you, there's going to be expectations of being able to challenge for the title. But for me, what I see key is not losing the identity, because PSG fans haven't lost their identity as PSG fans, although they have become over expectant because of the fund inflow, and that is key. If you lose the identity, if you make the culture take a back seat, that's going to cause a lot more problems than just winning championships in the long run.
Fair enough. I think, first of all, I want to say, are they the big white hope because they're wearing kanduras, the white kanduras?
I mean, I was going to say that I was just going to crack a different joke that, the Sheikh probably wanted to buy a Newcastle, and that's why he bought a Newcastle.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what. He wanted it to be. He wanted it just a normal castle, but a new one. They said, "All right, we'll get one for you." But I agree. I think in terms of, I spoke to a couple of these Newcastle fans, and they said all they want is just to be competitive in the first few years. They don't want them to be like title challenges in the next year and all of that, because that's not what their goal. Their goal is to slowly get first, be competitive, and then over the next few years build a sustainable model enough that you can compete with the likes of City, United, Arsenal. Chelsea, Arsenal, I think would anyway be the first step. Liverpool, all of them. So I think that's what they are. I guess a silent stamp probably would be what we're looking at. Parmeshwar and Sharad. Let me ask Sharad. Sharad's been a little quiet now. Too quiet.
Yeah, I would also put him in silent stand because according to the recent reports, I don't think if it is right or wrong, if it is a reliable, credible source. They've been looking at, like, for example, Raf they're looking at options that are good at their job. They are not just like for the sake of like sports washing or something, like for a PR stunt or something. They are doing that. They're actually interested. They're quite involved in this. As far as the reports may suggest, but we don't know what the future may hold. We don't know if the Saudi Arabia, this Salman guy, is just looking for maybe promoting his own country, something like that. We don't know. We don't know what the future holds. But according to the signs, they are looking at Fofana of Leicester City is a very good young talent, and they are looking at such talents. Tarkowski, for example, from Burnley. So I don't know who of them who all would be ending up in Newcastle, but the signs are good. And Stavely, who was a mediator in this all takeover thing, the lady Stavely. So when I read in Athletic that when Athletic interviewed her, they picked Newcastle because Newcastle has a rich tradition, rich history, everything. So it has a reason because why they picked Newcastle as the club they wanted to take over or invest. So they wanted to.
I think we've lost him again. But no, I agree with what Sharad's saying. In the sense that
wait, he's back.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah.
Oh, still stuck. Oh no.
No, you're okay now.
You got cut off in between, Sharad. That's the thing.
Yeah. Okay. So Stavely, in her interview, she told that they would be concentrating for the academy level to the intentions are right, intentions and the motives are right now, but we can't predict everything now. Yeah, let's see. I think it will be a success over the years, but Newcastle fans shouldn't dream about getting the title or top 4 in the first 2 years or something.
No, apart from Ragnar, I think recent rumors are now that they're looking at Brendan Rodgers as a coach, which would be very, very good in the sense that he's someone who you could really look at building and developing youth talent and getting them to,
And
a Leicester.
also, Antonio Conte. That was the name.
That was the first name, yeah.
Initial.
No, actually, no. The first name was Jose Mourinho. Then it became Antonio Conte.
But
then
Mourinho is not.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. I think Brendan Rodgers for a long-term project makes sense because
And
that's what
also-
Leicester are doing.
Yeah, Graham Potter of Brighton. It's a brilliant-
But it's nice to see that they are looking at a long-term solution rather than something short-term. Because
And
they
I think
can just go.
Antonio Conte signs for Newcastle. It would be a great acquisition for them because
I don't know how long Antonio is going to be there. Also,
just to give my opinion, at least, like if I think I agree with Sharad and Vijay here that the focus should be on building a platform first, because yes, PIF is absurdly rich and they will invest, but you still don't, there is still always the thought in the back of your mind that the investment can always sometime go wrong. It's not necessarily that it works out. Yes, in the case of PSG, it worked, whatnot. But I think Newcastle, as we saw a report today, that they, even though Fofana is new at Leicester, they still want Fofana. I think you need to build a base like Wolves first to begin with, and then go on to hire a winner like Antonio Conte, because yes, he's a very demanding coach, and if you get in a coach like that from year one, I'm not sure all players will be convinced to join the club, albeit the absurd salaries they might receive and whatnot. Like, you might still back free agents like Kessié and whatnot. Maybe you might, just maybe. But I don't think other players will just be convinced just because Newcastle are offering high money. And yes, I know they have history. It's not that Newcastle don't. But I think in that sense, it only makes sense that they build towards something. You don't want to, you don't want to lose, as Vijay said, your identity, because they are pretty much a historic club. Like, even though Sunderland are pretty much in a shit show, they still maintain their identity down bottom. So I think it has to be a step-by-step procedure. You can't hire Antonio Conte right at the end of the season, and because again he's going to demand certain kind of players. He'll be like, I want players for my five.
It'll be too chaotic and it'll be too confrontational as a first coach, and that might be an issue.
You can imagine how the PIF's orders go along with what Conte wants. Yes, they might back him financially, but he might not get exactly what he wants eventually. So I think it's definitely in silence then, I guess. I don't know if others agree as well. I don't know where exactly. Maybe they're back of it.
I'd say ranking, let the even if you put him below Anschutz also, it's okay because it's really speculative.
Let poor Anschutz have his day. Poor guy. Let him have his. Look at him. He looks like he's begging at us. Like, come on, man. His face is like, come on. Like, you can't do that. But all right. So I guess that's about it. We've got the tiers here. So luckily, none of the top rich bosses, if at all, none of them have reached the lowest point of Mike Ashley. Stan Kroenke would have been, maybe if the Glazers had been there, they would have probably had a tough shout for that. But we've got Roman Abramovic as the world's best boss. We've got Sheikh Mansour, Agnelli, and Nasser Al-Khelaifi as pretty good. We've got Mateschitz. We've got Jan Jindong, whatever. I actually said Ding Dong, so I almost felt like Ranieri saying dilly ding, dilly dang. And then we've got Hopp, we've got Guo, we've got Anschutz, we've got obviously the speculative PIF, and we've got Stan Kroenke all the way down at Isn't It Soccer? Because that's what he probably calls it.
If you probably rotate your screen, whoever's listening in, you'll probably see it looks like a massive middle finger to everyone listening.
Oh yeah, it kind of does. I think if you put like a Khleifi down here or something, it would just be perfectly symmetrical. But there we go. That's the middle finger to all of the rich club owners, because we want football back to the way it was without the money. But anyway, here we are. So thanks Vijay, Parmeshwar and Shad for being a part of this podcast. It's really an interesting talk here, getting your thoughts on this, and I can't wait to host you in the near future.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for inviting.
Thanks for having us.
Nice.
Thanks for having us.
Good night all.
Good night. And thank you to those of you listening to. Actually, you're not listening to this. You're watching us because this is only on YouTube. So thank you for watching this particular episode, and go check out our other podcasts on other series, whether it be on podcast platforms, and check out our Patreon page. You can be a member of the podcast. You can help us you can financially support the channel as well. Help us, get better equipment, do more podcast series in the future and all of that. So yeah, there are different tiers, different benefits for each one. So go check that out. All the links are in the descriptions. Even I'll put Parmeshwar's Solo Inter podcast in the description. You can go check that out as well. Go listen to all those the episodes that released. So yeah, no worries. We podcast people have to stick together. And I guess that's about it for this episode. That's episode number 3 of the IC series. I'll catch you all next week, and that's about it. I'm your host, Praddy, once again. You stay safe and see you.